Welcome back to State of the Franchise, the podcast where we explore franchises of all shapes, sizes, backgrounds, and types.
That sounded really good, I thought.
Is that different than, genre? Or did I even say genre? I don't remember.
Well, it doesn't even matter because this is what makes the podcast great. We're keeping it loose. Although today we're actually talking about something that could be considered an actual franchise, I feel.
That is true.
We're not really stretching it this time, but it is something, very different for us, and we have a great guest. Tom, you want to introduce our guest?
Yes, well, I'll introduce ourselves first because we didn't even get to that part yet.
Or what the podcast is.
I, of course, am Tom Stadler, here with my co-host, Fred Dakin.
How's it going?
Good. Fred, I have one question for you before we get started, though.
Are you ready for some football?
Oh!
I mean, are you ready? Because it's not American football. We're obviously talking about European football.
Yeah, but I'm sure they have, a country singer come out and rock a song before some of the football games over there in England.
It's true. And that's, of course, the old version of the NFL Monday Night Football theme from Hank Williams Jr.
That was what I would watch and then check out. I'm like, all right, I saw what I wanted to see. I'm going to bed.
That was such a good amp-up theme. I miss it. But yes, you're correct. Our franchise this week is the English Premier League, also just called the Premier League, the top level of the English Football League. And Austin Diesta is here today as our special guest. Austin, how are you?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. Welcome to the podcast. Very excited to have you here this week to talk to us about football, also known as soccer, also known as... Do people call it footy, or is that something totally different?
No, they do.
They do. Where do they call it footy?
Probably England is my best guess as well.
I feel in the pubs they're calling it footy.
Call it footy. It's good stuff.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Good.
A little nervous. First time podcasting, so
First time.
it'll go well.
You're going to be a natural. I have confidence already. I can see it in your eyes. First remote guest too. This is definitely going to be an exploration adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah. So for those who are not familiar with the sport of soccer, also known as football, I feel like this is just going to keep going. Or I should say, rather, those who are not familiar with Premier League. So soccer is a sport played by, is it 22 men on the field at the same time? I know this, but I'm doubting myself.
Yeah. 10 plus a goalkeeper.
Okay. So 11 players each side of the team trying to score a goal on one another. The Premier League is then the top league in the English Football League, consisting of 20 clubs that operates on a system of promotion and relegation, which is a type and a thing I really want to explore with you, Austin, because it's such an interesting aspect in comparison to a lot of American sports.
Absolutely. Compared to any American sport, I don't think that there is promotion relegation in any American sport that I can think of.
Yeah,
So
it's very true.
definitely the most unique part of European or world soccer football, for sure.
So what is your experience with soccer, both as a fan and even did you ever play? And who is your favorite team or favorite club?
So I did play a lot as a kid.
Okay. What age are we talking?
Probably 4 to 14 or so
Oh, wow.
on the Whitefish Bay Sharks.
Oh, wow.
And I was terrible, and I was just there. I got participation trophies.
Oh, man.
I was terrible, but my team was good. So
Oh, nice.
we actually did win a lot of trophies. So I actually did get a lot of trophies.
That's exciting.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was
The
your
team was really
position?
good. I primarily played right back.
Oh, nice.
So,
Now,
like,
were you committed when you played?
I was committed in that I liked to play, but I also wasn't that good. I wasn't that healthy either. My asthma was not so great when I was younger.
Oh, man.
So So I was there. I was a warm body, and I liked playing. Um, just was not that successful at it, but have always loved the game. Um, and watched it and played FIFA, like I'm sure a lot of other people have played FIFA.
It's probably one of the most popular video games. I think even still now.
Well, FIFA is
Right.
like the game where I see people who don't play video games, but they'll play FIFA.
Yeah, absolutely. That's got to be of all the games in the world. I mean, probably even more, maybe more popular than Super Mario. That feels like a John Lennon type quote of like, "We're bigger than Jesus," or something like that.
Well, bigger than Mario.
Bigger than Mario.
Well, and it may be that soccer is the world sport,
It
you
is.
know. So, um, so back in '08, I had to look that up. My girlfriend at the time, and now my wife, who is also Tommy's sister,
Ooh.
John's my
Tommy.
brother-in-law.
Wow.
Tommy, I'm bringing it back to '08 here.
Yeah, I was gonna say old nickname. Old nickname.
Right. We had a chance to go out to England, jolly old England, and catch a game. And we caught a Chelsea game. So
Oh,
Chelsea
nice.
is my favorite team, and ever since I've just been a very die-hard fan. I record all the games, pay for subscriptions to watch them. Sometimes if I'm up at 6:30 in the morning, I'll catch a game if they're playing that early because they're 5 or 6 hours ahead of us. And
Yeah, it's
I've
true.
Yeah,
also
I was
been
going to
lucky.
say that's kind of a commitment.
Right, right. And I've also been lucky in that Chelsea is a pretty good team.
Mm-hmm.
They've won a lot of trophies, so they've been easy to support in that way for sure.
Sure, and they're third place right now in the Premier League, right?
They are in third. They have been slumping a little bit, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I have faith.
Yeah, I feel it's like the big three, like someone like me who like has played FIFA, doesn't follow the Premier League. I know Arsenal, Chelsea, and then the third one just slipped me. Manchester United.
Yeah.
And then there's
Right,
also
Manchester
Manchester
United.
City, which is my FIFA team.
Right.
Who is in
And-
first place right now in the EPL, I believe.
Oh wow. So
And Liverpool, who's in second.
Oof. I had a
Also one
roommate
of
in
the very,
college
very big boys.
who was a big Liverpool fan.
was it John Lennon?
It was not John Lennon. I'm not that old. No, I mean, that's great, though. I mean, that's why you're here, Austin. I think having that kind of background, that kind of passion for the sport is exactly what we're looking for to really get into the depths of this franchise, which really, I think, is probably the broadest franchise we've gotten into today because there are so many teams. Like, we're talking about 20 clubs right now currently in the Premier League, out of, though, what do we have? 70 total teams, though, in the English Football League?
Something like that. I can't remember the exact number. There's 5 or 6 leagues basically,
Wow.
all within the Football Association.
That's pretty incredible. That's just huge compared to like you get an average of maybe like 30 teams on any sport in the U.S. here, or I should say in the North America because we have all our Canadian brothers on their teams too, like the Raptors and the Blue Jays and Maple Leafs, all Toronto teams. We're not going to talk about Montreal or anybody because why? Fred, what was your history though with soccer? I know you said you played FIFA. Did you play soccer ever?
Oh yeah, that was the household sport was soccer for the longest time. I started out as like the kid on defense in the back picking flowers to at one point I'd say like 5th to 6th to 7th grade I was put behind goal.
Oh, wow.
And I was a bigger kid and back then the goals are smaller for kids. So I think between that and I actually think I had some talent doing it. And I wasn't afraid of getting hit with the ball as well. So I had this one run where I was like this all-star goalie in like 5th, 6th, 7th grade, way early. And I remember when I got to 7th grade, I was like, I want to play football. And I think it was because The Water Boy came out. Like legit, that was the movie. I was like, yeah, football. I want to be like him. And I signed up for football and it was the worst. I was in like the varsity weight class because I was heavier. So I was playing with like juniors in high school and I was in 7th or 8th grade.
Oh my God.
And just getting pummeled. I remember in one game I was doing really well as a guard and they ended up just like double teaming me and like I broke a finger.
Oh, jeez.
So
man.
like I always like kick myself. I'm like, if I would have just stuck with the soccer where I was killing it. you know?
Yeah. Oh,
But
man.
my brother, he actually played on travel teams. He worked with a lot of great soccer people, and he went to England and played a little bit with. He was in boarding school for a year.
What?
And
Really?
he said that was some of the most intense gaming that he dealt with because it's lifeblood over there. I've been a few times, and it's definitely the football of England.
Yeah.
If you get my drift.
I get that. Man, I didn't know that about your brother, though. And I didn't even know you've been to England. So this is all brand new information.
Yeah, well, real quick story. Last time I went to England was to take my grandmother it was right when I graduated college. It was a bucket list trip to see Andre Rieu, the violinist.
Yeah.
And apparently at this time he wasn't doing American tours. So I took my grandmother, like, for my parents, because they got her the tickets. They're like, we just want you to go and kind of take care of her. And, she's got like a walker. So we get to England, and the day before the show, one of the people in his symphony had a heart attack. So they canceled the show.
Oh,
So we went all the way out there for her to do this bucket list thing. Good news of the story, she has seen Andre Rieu twice in America since this has
that's
happened.
good.
But I was just like, damn.
to go all the way out there, though, and then to not even see the thing you were there for.
But that's something that, if I wasn't with my, elderly grandma, I would have loved to have gone to a Premier game, I think, because it's definitely bigger than going to a minor league like baseball game, but it seems almost not as big to me as going to like a huge NFL game. It feels local within the culture.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it other than football just seems so commercial. This seems like tribal almost, and that's the vibe I like about it.
I would definitely agree with that in terms of the fandom. Probably the most diehard, with all due respect to all our American teams, and obviously being in the great state of Wisconsin, the Green Bay Packers. If you're in Green Bay, it's like your life. That's probably the closest culture I can think of outside of maybe like college sports. Like maybe like the Nebraska Cornhuskers are just like, that's like their only team in the state. Like that every Saturday is a big thing. And I know Austin's kind of nodding too because he's a big Iowa guy.
Right. No professional sports teams. That's your professional sports franchise, essentially.
Yeah, right. And you just live for those game days, which it's just insane to think. Like when you get so flush with all the professional sports around you, and when you're in a big city, that it's like, yeah, sure. But yeah, that's crazy.
I think that's a good segue to talk about how big the league is and how interesting promotion and relegation is, in that, here in the U.S., there's each of the major sports are about 32 teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for the Football Association in England, there's, like you said, I think like 70, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for each league, 3 teams at the top, assuming you're not at the top of the Premier League, 3 teams get promoted at the end of the season, and 3 teams drop down. So you could be a much, much smaller market team like a Nebraska or an Iowa and be playing in the Premier League, where you're playing with the real big boys.
And that's crazy. But they have the talent, obviously, to be in that league. Do those teams usually last when they do get promoted if they're a smaller team that just happens to make it to the top of the second tier?
Some do, some don't. And some kind of ping pong back and forth. It seems like there are teams like Fulham or Norwich that every year they drop down and come right back up the next year. Some of it, of course, is just pure finances.
Sure.
There's no like salary cap per se.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the
there
deals are crazy for what players are
Right.
getting. Didn't Ronaldo just sign like a world-shattering like deal for like all of like major sports?
I'm not quite sure how much he makes, but it's a lot. But the Man Cities, the Chelseas, the Man Uniteds of the world, their clout is so much more, and theoretically they can just buy the talent.
Yeah,
You know,
but it is such an interesting premise to know that like I think the biggest change in between European sports, or at least this English football league, and American sports is like American sports. If you're at the bottom, sometimes it's like, man, we're gonna tank. We're gonna get rid of all of our good players, and we're gonna try and get a good draft pick in the next round next year. Get a young stud out of college, and we'll be right back around. Whereas in soccer out in England, it's like, nope, you're at the bottom, you're out. Like you lose. That's a lost wages for how many people and lost money. I think we saw that in Ted Lasso, right?
Yeah, I watched that documentary as well in preparation for this.
Ted Lasso, or
So I'm very familiar with all the ins and outs of the soccer franchise.
hey man, you just gotta believe.
well, yeah, and you bring up a good point. There's no draft, right? If you don't if you finish at the bottom, you just drop down to the next league.
So that actually is one question I had though. So because there is not a draft, so they have what, developmental academies for most of the major clubs?
Most of the major clubs have academies. They have there's a loan system for soccer, which is different from any of the major U.S. sports. Like theoretically, Man City could loan Chelsea a player for a while. Like if that player probably wasn't going to get playing time, or they wanted to save a little money and Chelsea needed that player as an example. But that can go across leagues too. So somebody from the Premier League could be loaned to somebody in Germany in the Bundesliga or something like that.
Oh wow, so it even goes like internationally like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Oh, that's wild.
Yep.
But then they don't play each other at the end of the year like Spanish, like Spain's La Liga and like the Italian leagues and all. They don't, other than like the World Cup, right? But that's all national teams.
That's all national teams. In regionally, so Europe or North America or South America, the local teams all have regional competitions. So in Europe is the Champions League,
Okay.
which if you play FIFA, you've probably come across, where the top approximately 3 or 4 teams of all the leagues in Europe all get together and play a competition.
Nice. Okay, so that's what it means when we're talking about the Champions League then.
Yep.
That's something I also like about soccer or football over like a lot of American sports. I love like tournaments. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you don't get a lot of that tournament vibe in like football or any baseball. Like,
Yeah.
they had double headers or something, but just like,
Right.
I don't know, the cups, the tournaments, I feel like I like the fanfare of that.
Yeah.
The cups are great because there are teams that you may never see in 20, 30 years, and all of a sudden you get to play them. And how cool is it that this amazing team from Serie A in Italy is coming to play your team here in England or whatever it may be. It just brings a very cool global vibe to it all.
Man,
Nice.
it's a pretty big picture to think about all that. I mean, when you're playing for a world title in these leagues, you're really playing for a world title. Whereas, in the World Series, it's all U.S. and Toronto teams.
Right. Well, it's cool too, in that it gives teams something to continue fighting for. You're fighting to not get relegated. You're fighting if you continue to advance in these cup competitions. You can be competing on multiple fronts.
Man.
Nice. Do you have friends in like locally that you can discuss Premier stuff, or even like local Chelsea fans? You can go to like the local bars and pubs to see stuff, or are you just kind of a man on his own?
There are a few people that I talk to locally, but in Chicago, when we used to live there, I would occasionally go to some soccer bars, some pubs,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and have hit up a Chicago Fire game or two there. So that
Oh,
was kind of
nice.
cool.
Yeah, I used to go to a soccer camp coached by the Baltimore Blast goalie. And it was kind of weird because apparently he was known to be like a hottie amongst like my mom and her friends, and she didn't know, like, because like they would go watch the local games and stuff, and then she showed up to like the soccer camp I was doing. She was like, "Oh, it's Keith Van Aaron."
I love
You're
that.
like you're like, Mom, why are you so dressed up right now?
Exactly.
I'm just being a soccer mom there, Fred.
Why are you wearing heels on the soccer pitch?
Just out for a night on the town, man. I can't help but think of like Roy Kent and like Jamie Tart. No, it's Ted Lasso is just way too much into like the environment now, which I think is what makes this even more exciting. Some people have a way into talking about this versus just kind of being like, oh yeah, I know that soccer thing.
Yeah, well, I'm
Right.
not like a big sports guy at all. I don't really enjoy watching it, but I do find myself around World Cup time when it's on. I think if I had an in and got into the schedule, it is something that I would definitely pick over watching any other sports because I feel other sports just don't have the suspense that soccer does. Like when you're watching it, to me, it can feel like a rubber band being slowly pulled because the time is running out and the goal. The goals are so limited for a soccer game. You can have a 1-0 game or. So I feel there's so much tension and I can really get into that. Some people say it's boring and that blows my mind. I'm like, no, baseball's boring.
Right.
That hurts my heart a
Well,
little bit.
It's true though. I don't mind. I kind of like when we went to that baseball game. That was my first one in like 3 years, and I had a great time. But still, baseball's a little boring.
Yeah, I get that.
well, like Tom kind of alluded to, the World Cup truly is a world competition. Additionally, it's only every 4 years too, so it's not that frequent that you get a champion here.
Right. That's what I need. Is sports just not happen so often, and maybe I'll get into them if they're like it's the NFL this year. Every 4 years we have an NFL. I might be like, oh yeah, nice.
I know it's funny that we're doing this as our first sports related episode because I would describe myself as a sports fan, but certainly soccer is one challenge you're challenging me on. I don't have the breadth of knowledge that I do with baseball or football or even basketball to a certain extent. So, yeah, I think that's why it's an interesting thing that we're kind of on even footing here today of kind of being like, hey, we know it, but we're not experts at it. So, other than Austin, who obviously knows quite a bit about it, and but I do know
Try.
a
I know
little
some.
bit. You know more than I would have. I think more than an average person, I would say, has.
That's fair, probably.
But I do have some knowledge about the
Oh.
history
Oh.
of the league.
Do tell.
Yeah, so the English Football League, came to learn, was actually founded in 1888, which is called the Football League then, by Aston Villa and William McGregor. Or I'm sorry, the Aston Villa director, William McGregor. The Aston Villa sounded like a real person's name.
I like the stank you put on it.
Aston Villa. Like if I had a child, I might be naming him Aston Villa.
Oh, nice.
So originally,
I'm gonna remember that one.
Aston Villa, yeah, with your upcoming birth that's in, what, T-3 weeks?
Oh wow.
4 week, 1 month to the date.
1 month to the date.
Today's
Wow.
the 20th, and February 20th.
That'll be my new nephew, ladies and
Are
gentlemen.
you gonna get any Chelsea gear for the young one?
100%. But I will not be calling him Aston Villa.
Okay. After
I,
this,
I reserve
breakdown-
that for Tom.
After this breakdown of the history, I want to come back to gear.
We'll definitely have to talk more about gear because I think it really is something that not only do passionate soccer fans wear, but I mean, it's just their passion in general is incomparable.
And if we're gonna call it gear, then we should call it kits, as they do.
Oh.
It's a good point. I think you're right. But the kits, way back when, were only for 12 teams originally, or 12 clubs originally. And then eventually in 1950, they grew from 12 to 92 different clubs. So this is just the English Football League now. We're not even talking about the Premier League. So the first iteration of the Premier League, which was not called the Premier League, was developed in 1992, which basically it was all these teams were capitalizing on some financial opportunities to basically just get richer. And so they started and they broke away from that competition and created their own league, essentially, or their own tier here. Still being part, though, of the English Football League, where they would start the system of relegation and promotion. So it wasn't until 2007 that they were called the Premier League. And that was when they really started to... So the Football League, therefore, no longer includes the top 20 clubs who belong in that group because of that whole promotion and relegation piece. So far, 136 teams have played in the English Football League up to 2013, and including those in the Premier League, since those clubs must pass through the Football League before reaching the former. And that's kind of the long and short on the history of the Premier League here.
Do you know if any of those original 12 teams are Premier teams these nowadays? Like, what was one of them? Like,
Aston Villa is in the league.
okay.
So they are a team.
A team, the name of your firstborn, everything.
Right. I don't know what the other names of the teams are, but if you were to tell me, I could tell you they are still in the Premier League.
Do you want to take some guesses? I have it right here.
I mean, probably Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal. From the big boys. I don't know. Best guesses.
The one you've gotten correct so far is Aston Villa.
Wow.
Yeah, the others, I'll just tell you guys.
Sure.
Accrington,
Nope.
Blackburn, Bolton,
Okay.
Burnley,
Burnley is at the bottom right now.
Are they? Of the
Yep.
current Premier League?
Yep.
Okay.
Baratheon?
Baratheon,
Robert
Lannister,
Baratheon.
You said House Bolton earlier.
House Bolton, Ramsay Bolton. We have Derby County, Everton, who was in the Premier League not too long
Right?
ago.
That
Or are
sounds
they
familiar.
They still are.
Still? Okay.
They just fired their gaffer, their manager.
They call it a gaffer?
Call it a gaffer.
I think that was covered in the doc.
Oh. I've been read ahead. I'm sorry. Notts County, Preston North End, Stoke, as they were known at the time, West Bromwich,
Wow.
Albion. Oops, that will be a Freudian slip.
West Bromwich, Bolton, Stoke, and Blackburn were all in the Premier League a couple years ago.
Okay.
They got relegated. So they've been within the last 5 or 6 years they've been in the Premier League at some point.
Gotcha. And the last one was Wolverhampton.
Still in.
Really?
Yep.
All right. Rock and roll. That's pretty crazy to think those teams are over. Well, now what would it be? Almost 130 years old? That's pretty
That's
decent.
pretty wild.
Yeah, when you think about it. The big thing, though, I want to ask you, Austin, is what is something that you love the most? Like, what brings you to watch the Premier League games every week? And maybe in general, why do you think so many people do enjoy it?
I love it. Like you said, like the whole fandom of it, where a lot of teams are very just localized. They're local fans now. Admittedly, the Premier League has gotten very global.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're probably the richest league out of all the leagues in the world, not just Europe. You know, TV rights, sponsorship deals, billionaire conglomerates purchasing their clubs,
Mm-hmm.
like Chelsea. Chelsea was the like original like billionaire Russian oligarch coming in to buy a team.
Oh, sure.
Um, but going back to the fans, they, unlike like a basketball game or a NFL game where they pipe in noise to get the fans to cheer.
Mm-hmm.
The fans cheer on their own. They oftentimes will stand up the whole game and they have their own cheers. They make up, they sing without any prompting.
Songs, right? There's
Yeah,
songs for these leagues.
there's songs. There's songs for individual players.
Wow.
Um,
Jamie Tart. Do, 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 do,
right,
do.
right, right. Yeah, well, exactly, right.
Yeah.
Um, the one game that we were fortunate enough to see was against Middlesbrough, who I think actually dropped that year and hasn't been back in the Premier
Oh,
League
no.
Wow.
since. But it was a one nil game,
Ooh.
and Ricky Carvalho scored it for Chelsea, and they were singing his name for like 15 minutes. They have all these interesting like songs for players and for their team that without prompting they just continue to sing. I think it's amazing.
And then when you go to like a football game, we have like a big D and a picket fence. Like
Right, right,
that's all we have going on.
right.
Or like the other thing that really like they have going on, or the like broadcasters, the announcers, like we could just do so much better in the NFL and
Yeah.
baseball, because like over there they just have such a way with words. It's almost Shakespearean when they do a game, but when here it's like, and he threw the ball and it missed. I think next time he should catch it. If they do want gains, they do need to start winning points.
You sound like someone who's listened to Troy Aikman a little bit.
Well, there's no need for like organ players or DJs to be like da 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 charge, like um
That's an interesting point that you just brought up there. Isn't it weird that like soccer has been around longer or as long as baseball, and yet baseball feels like it's still kind of stuck in like the 1940s, and soccer has just kind of developed with the times a little bit? It's very new age, kind of feels like basketball almost. A lot of new gear, a lot of just fresh colors and look.
For sure.
I feel like a lot of that has just been like organic within soccer.
Yeah.
It just has evolved.
I mean-
Whereas like sports in the US, they like train you to cheer
Mm-hmm.
when to cheer. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Go, Pack, go.
Right. Right. They put it on the jumbotron, and then you and 70 of your best friends cheer the same thing. But
Right.
in soccer, they just start singing a song, and everybody just starts singing the song.
Yeah.
And I also feel with the Premier League, and this just could be from outsiders' perspective, it feels like there's no fair weather fans. It's very much like you support your team even if they're the most dog shit team in the league. You show up and you like cheer them out because it represents your area.
Yeah. I was watching or listening to an interview with Will Ferrell, and somebody was even asking him, because he's a Chelsea fan as well, Austin. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent.
Big
Maybe
Chelsea
you guys
fan.
could link up.
Yeah. I hear he's open to being friends with new people right now. I don't know.
I think that he is actually part owner of LAFC.
You're correct.
wow.
That's actually why they were interviewing him. But he was also wearing, I'm going to tee you up here, a scarf for Chelsea. And they asked him about it. And he's
Oh.
like, yeah. And he's like, I know you can't be very, wishy-washy or namby-pamby about your fandom in the Premier League. And it's like that seems to track, because it's like people will question you up and down, but those Chelsea scarves look pretty sweet.
It's kind of like last week we were talking about Survivor. They have the barbs or whatever.
The buffs, yeah.
Oh, the buffs.
The barbs. The barbs and stars go to Vista Del Mar.
Star.
But yeah, I mean, I think that is what's cool though about it. It's just how passionate the fandom is. the all the gear that they do wear, and it's like it's so trendy to wear a scarf to these games. I think I love that. I love the scarves. Like it's such a sweet look.
Well, what's interesting with the gear, and I think NBA has gotten a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Is they every year their kits will use the kits uh, change a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a home kit and away kit, and there's always a third kit.
Ooh.
So, although Chelsea's is terrible this year, it's looks like a B. It's like yellow and black.
Um.
Doesn't make any sense because their colors are blue. But um, I feel like that also like brings a lot of attention to the league. It's like almost like a fashion show in some ways too, right?
Sure. Is the third kit, is that kind of like vintage, or is it just whatever they want to show off?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know what the point of it is. I mean, maybe it's just kind of like, you know how like the Bucks have like that Cream City one, or like the city jersey,
Mm-hmm.
or it was that cream one, and then it was blue, I think, last year.
Yeah, I didn't like that one at all.
It's just another one for whatever reason.
Your world champion Milwaukee Bucks we're talking about.
Correct. World champion Milwaukee Bucks.
I mean, truthfully, the national champion, but they're
The
world
national
champions of the NBA.
Yeah.
And going back to Chelsea, the current European Champions League champion.
So they came up big then.
They did. They did.
So that was actually something I wanted to ask you about as well, Austin. Kind of about, so Chelsea, how would you describe, if you're going to give us some inside baseball or try to explain how they play in comparison to other teams, to somebody who doesn't watch soccer regularly? Like, how would you describe Chelsea in the comparison to Man City, who's number one right now?
Chelsea is very much a possession team.
Okay. And what does that mean?
They like to hold the ball, they like to dribble the ball, they like to pass the ball, and they like to just keep possession of it.
Okay.
The point of that is to tire the opponent out as you're chasing after.
The Rocky
so that's
3
kind of-
method.
Right. Well, and it's a little bit of like offense, offense by keeping the ball away.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. But how would I don't know how I would describe it. So somewhat similar to like say the Golden State Warriors in that it's very free flowing. That being said, Man City is probably the closest to like a Golden State Warriors type team, where it's very, very 1-2 give and go, quick passes.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
I think it does. Or if we are going to use boxing, if people know boxing a little bit better, it sounds like Chelsea's more like the Floyd Mayweather, kind of like play defense, wear you out. Whereas Man City's more, boy, who was even, I was going to say Pacquiao, but I guess he's kind of past his prime.
Right.
But he's
Like-
kind of
like-
in your face, jab you a little bit, right?
Right. Whereas
Maybe
a
Tyson.
team like
Yeah.
a team like Liverpool plays very much counterattack,
Okay.
where they kind of pack the box and they get really close on their defensive end, and then when there's a mistake, everybody rushes forward very quickly. They have very, very fast players. So whatever analogy, whatever boxer that you can think of that is more of a counterattack type boxer, that's who they would be.
I don't know that I watch enough boxing to even.
Me neither. But you went down the Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather route, so I was hoping you had somebody that was more of a counterattack.
I
type
feel like I
boxer.
did most of my studying on boxing during that point, and then I got to go back to like Rocky. Like Apollo, is he like a counterattack guy? Maybe. I don't know. But very interesting. No, I wanted to kind of get a sense for the strategy, because I feel like I watch soccer. I try to figure out like what they're trying to do. And there's times when it makes a lot of sense. Like I'm like, okay, yep, they're trying to work their way up the field very methodically, like passing back and forward, trying to get guys out of their positions. But then there's like other times when it just feels like, yeah, they are just sort of like keeping the ball on one side of the pitch, and it's called a pitch, not a field.
Pitch, right? Right.
Yeah, and
So,
and that's just very interesting.
so the interesting thing about soccer, kind of like hockey, although I'm not a hockey expert by any means, but you can tie.
Yeah.
So um, it's not unlike basketball or football or baseball. It's not your record doesn't matter. It's your points.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 points for a win, 1 point for a tie, 0 points for a loss. So depending on what game you watched or where you are, who played, if they're just kind of playing all defense and just maybe that team very well could have been just trying to hold on to tie
Mm-hmm.
and get that point. That's what you generally see a lot of times where the Chelseas, Liverpools, the Man Cities, when they play against lower level teams, teams at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
those teams at the bottom, that single point matters so much to them that they generally just play defense as much as they can and try and catch you out on the break.
Sure. Do you enjoy the games that are kind of like defensive bouts like that, where it is just sort of 0-0 or 1-1? Or do you like to see games that end in like 5-4? Maybe that's just a dumb question, but I know some people love defensive battles.
Yeah, I think it. I think that I love the strategy of it, depending on who you are.
Mm.
If it's Chelsea playing against a team that is just trying to scratch out a point, and it infuriates me because all they do is they just put their 10 people in front of the goalie, and they just really get compact.
Mm-hmm.
But those wide open games that are just a track meet are also amazing to watch.
Sure.
Where it's just like you don't even have like a second to breathe, where all of a sudden you blink and there's another goal.
I was gonna ask. I want to pull Mark Manor in here and ask, who are your guys? Who do you like? Who are your players? When you go and get knits, is there a last name you're looking for on the back of that jersey?
I haven't bought a jersey in a while, admittedly. But and me personally, I really enjoy the forwards, of course. Like, who doesn't like people scoring?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like watching the Ronaldos and the Lionel Messis of the world are amazing. What they can do with the ball. But I do also really like the midfielders that are the tempo guys. They control the flow.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, they're the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
They're the link in between defense and offense, and they really like control the passing of the ball. So those are the guys that I really like.
Nice. I was very into. I loved that watching that German player. He has that very German name.
Jurgen Klopp?
No, it's like Steiger, something like that. I'll look it up in a second here, but he was just this barrel of a man that did, I believe, Premier and whatever the equivalent of the German league is for that. I know he played
Bundesliga?
on that, and he was on the German World Cup team, and he was on my FIFA game.
Thomas Mueller?
No, it's like a. I just feel like I'm being very offensive to Germans' names, but it's like Reimsteiger or something like Schweinsteiger or something like that.
Oh, Bastian Schweinsteiger.
Yes, there it is.
There
Yeah.
it is.
He played for Bayern Munich.
Bayern Munich is that's the team.
That's the Rolls Royce of the Bundesliga.
Oh, nice. So what I know, I have good taste. Apparently, that's
Yeah.
what I'm hearing.
That's right. It's a very successful team, that's for sure.
That's good. Mm-hmm. I like that we have the the Mustang of the teams.
Yeah, because that's also like I love seeing people with finesse when I watch games, but I do love just like the big barrel of a person who's just like knocking people over.
Yeah.
Because that's always, I know this is kind of almost like a boring thing to say at this point. Soccer's like really intense and there's no pads, you know? Like, it's true though.
I had so many guys in high school come up to me who were not football players who would always try to out tough me, and the soccer players were tops among them, and be like, soccer is a more tough game. We're all running around all game. We don't wear pads, so like when we get hit, it hurts. And I'm like, cool. Like that's fun. Like, I actually kind of like not having bruises because I'm wearing shoulder pads and knee pads. And all that.
Because I have protection, yes.
Yeah, although I still have crooked fingers to this day from getting my fingers caught in guys' shoulder pads on the defense. Ugh. But yeah, it just was always funny too. I'm just having those conversations. I have respect for all athletes. I think whatever you're doing, whatever sport you're playing, there's a skill that you are doing that is significantly better than anything I could even pretend to do. So honestly, I tip my cap.
So I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
Going back to promotion relegation, because it's like one of my favorite topics to talk about when it comes to world soccer.
Sure.
Would it work? Pick your sport in the U.S. I guess I don't know. Would it work in the U.S.?
This sounds like a coulda, woulda, shoulda topic, Austin, which is our next segment of our podcast.
Did I jump ahead? Did I jump ahead?
No.
No,
I think
you
we're
let
right
us
at
in.
right a perfect spot, I think, for that. I'll field this one first.
For sure.
Because Fred, I can tell you have
Because
opinions.
I kind of understand what you guys are talking about. You're talking about how that when they have their series of games or whatever, the bottom teams can't come back, right?
Yeah.
Like the plot
Right.
of Ted Lasso.
yeah,
pretty much.
exactly. Ted Lasso.
So just so we understand, so there's the Premier League,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
which is 20 teams, and then there is I forget what it's called. We'll just say League 1, League 2, League 3, League 4, or whatever it may be, right?
Sure.
So the bottom 3 teams currently looking at the table, which another word in England, it's called the table, not the rankings or whatever. We got Burnley, Newcastle, and Norwich. At the end of the season, those 3 would drop down a tier.
Okay.
The top 3 of the league below would then be promoted up for the next season.
Oh, okay.
And they would then sorry. So the league below is called the English League Championship, and then I think it's League 1, League 2, etc.
Actually, that is exactly right. I looked it up. It's Premier League is the top. Yep, League Championships number 2. So that's where AFC Richmond is for all the Ted Lasso watchers.
Right.
Yep. Then it's League 1 is the tier 3. League 2 is tier 4, which is kind of confusing. And then they have the National League, which is also confusing considering baseball.
Yeah.
Which I would say the sport it would probably work best for would be baseball, but that's just because I don't really think about minor league football. Is that even that's a thing?
Minor league football is not a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
But baseball is for sure there.
Yeah.
So do you think it could work for baseball, or could it work for? I know that there's a minor league hockey. I know that
hockey.
there's the G League and the NBA. Although, that being said, those teams are like affiliates of the major of NHL and the NBA. So there would have to be like an ownership distinction, probably.
Yeah. So I think operationally, I think it could work, but it'd be hard because the minor leagues, I think of most of the sports, I can't really speak for hockey. I mean, it seems competitive when you're there, but truthfully, unless you watch hockey religiously, I don't know if you can really tell the talent level difference. But like, I think for the NBA and baseball, the teams are good enough in the minors, but they're not. I don't know. It would totally change the way the game is played because you would keep good players, but I guess there wouldn't even be like a minor league team for a club. Like you wouldn't have a farm team like in baseball.
Right. Like like
The milkmen.
the Apple,
Yeah.
the Appleton whatever, or the Wisconsin Timber
Yeah,
Rattlers
or
or
like the
whatever. They
Beloit
would be their
Snappers.
yeah,
Yeah.
they would be their own separate team with the separate owner. That would be the only way it could potentially work.
Yeah, you'd have to completely reshuffle the way. You can obviously tell
Right.
we're figuring this out in real time, but
That being said, in my mind, could it work? Potentially. Would it ever happen? No, because
no, financially.
there's
Well, also,
financially.
like American sports fans, like they're really easy going to. They're not toxic, so I feel like any sort of major change would go really smooth.
Oh gosh, yeah. I
Well,
feel like
the owners would never allow it,
no.
right?
That's the first thing. Unless, and I think the talent pool then gets so spread thin. The only sport that could maybe pull that off might be basketball, because I think then you're dealing with smaller rosters where you could potentially spread the wealth. I mean, like how many good G League basketball players are like even the Milwaukee Bucks had like Christian Wood years ago.
Right.
He goes down to Houston, becomes a star. And it's like, so there's guys on those rosters that could elevate those teams to be like, oh, maybe they are better than the
Right.
32nd team in the NBA.
Well, and there's players that play in college, and
Yep.
there's a lot of European professional leagues too, where you could bring in these players.
Yeah.
Whereas a sport like football outside of Canada and the U.S. and the random European team, like nobody plays football. There's just right. There's not enough people. There's not enough players to potentially do something like that.
Right. And I think the problem is like, yeah, there really hasn't been an established alternative league to the NFL. I mean, outside of the Canadian Football League, we have been trying to get the XFL and the USFL or whatever. What was the other one? It was not the XFL, it was something else.
That's like the intense indoor football,
Arena
right?
League,
Yeah.
Arena League.
No, but it's not the Arena League. There was like that whole like they tried a totally different league. It was like the US. Like I think I'm thinking of an old league, but it's just like a couple of years ago they were trying this pre-pandemic, or it was like right at the beginning of the pandemic. They started that league and then it just tanked once. Everything went into
Is
shutdown.
that the one that Vince McMahon was trying to build?
No, that is the XFL.
Oh.
The wrestling king himself, Mr. Commissioner.
See the guy from the memes,
Yeah.
or like he gets increasingly more intense. That's
Yeah.
Vince McMahon.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Every wrestling meme you see is Vince McMahon. Yeah, so I think, we're talking about that. Financially, it's a non-starter unless you really, really got into a tough spot. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe baseball does get to a point there where they need to reinvigorate things because their sport is struggling financially even still. But
Even the even with MLS, they have a secondary league, and those are separate owners.
oh wow.
But
But they don't do relegation and promotion.
they don't do promotion relegation because, well, number one, there's still a primarily it's a monetary thing. It's a financial thing where now they're pretty established. They're known. Probably they're probably only the league is only maybe 20 years old. But now that they're known, the franchise fees costs of expansion are so high that if you said, "Hey, I want to buy a franchise now for $50 million or whatever it may be," there's no way you'd say, "Hey, I'm going to do that," and then there's a chance that my team is going to drop down to the next
lose
lower
money,
level.
yeah.
Right. No TV rights, etc. No way. No way
no.
would that happen.
I don't think it's a starter. I do have a question though for you guys, and a coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Okay.
What if the U.S. put their best athletes into soccer? Like, pretend there's no other sports in the U.S. Like, all there is soccer. So then you have all fields. Who would be the top players in the Premier League? Who would have made it over there?
So the top athletes, no matter what sport.
Yep. So we can talk about LeBron James. We can talk about
Does he have to be an American?
no. You
I
can
mean,
just be
like obviously you'd put a Giannis in there, right?
yeah.
Is tall good for soccer?
It can be.
Mm-hmm.
The for goalies, for sure. Many goalies are, I mean, at minimum 6 feet, but probably average like 6'4", 6'5". Chelsea's goalie is 6'5" ish.
Okay.
That would be insane with Giannis's wingspan, and he's 7 foot.
Right.
Like, would anything get by him?
I don't know. The defenders are usually taller,
Mm-hmm.
and occasionally you'll see a tall forward like Peter Crouch, who is now retired, but he was 6'7".
That's a name I know. Did he play for England?
He did for a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Crouch, Democles Beasley. These are all
Yep.
names from FIFA.
But I would say the taller you are, it would be hard, because then also you have to dribble the ball. If you think about that, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you can hold the ball above your head. You have to dribble the ball where it can very easily be tackled off you.
So it almost would make more sense for maybe NFL running backs potentially to be
Sure.
the
I was
better
think-
player because
Well,
they're quick.
I mean, certain positions though, right? Like if you're a central defender, a lot of them are minimum 6 feet.
Yeah.
Between 6 and 6'5".
What if you're just a house though, like Derrick Henry?
It works. You oftentimes, most of the times though, at least from my observation, you very rarely see somebody that is just a big bruising mammoth of a person,
Sure.
Right.
because you still have to dribble the ball. You still have to be quick and light enough to be able to control the ball.
Sure.
Yeah, I was thinking like maybe hockey players because I played a lot of indoor soccer growing up, and it's pretty much just like a hockey field.
Right.
Is an indoor soccer, and I feel the kind of, I don't know what it's called when you're going down the ice rink and you're going back and forth with your puck.
Skating.
Well, is it just skating when you have the puck? Because didn't know there was a word for where you have the ball in your or the
I
puck.
don't know.
Anyway, I feel like that's not too far from dribbling. Like,
I was thinking probably like wide receivers, and or like point guards,
there you go.
Chris Paul.
like
Yeah.
tall enough, but not too tall,
Yeah.
and
DeAndre
also not,
Hopkins,
right,
Devontae
like
Adams.
fast, but also can see the field well.
Yeah.
Especially point guards, right, where you want to be able to like pass the ball and see where the opponents are, that kind of thing.
Maybe
Interesting question.
like a Mark McGuire.
Mark McGuire. Jose Canseco. We're just going to go all Bash Brothers on this.
Cal Ripken Jr. I feel would be great soccer player.
I don't know what it is about baseball body types that just, I suppose there are players obviously that are very quick. Like Ricky Henderson back in the day would have been like amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
even Bo Jackson.
I feel like the baseball players who are in like excellent shape are the ones who'd be really good at soccer.
Yeah.
Because like some of those, like, yeah, the ones who are really running bases, but can also like have mass a little bit, but not so much where they're slow.
Yeah. Not pitchers though. Those guys are just tall, heavy, and they throw.
Can I go back to the promotion relegation thing and throw out another
You
scenario?
absolutely
For sure.
can.
I was thinking about that, like, because you need a certain amount of teams. I wonder if you could do it with like college basketball or college football, because there's so many teams. Like could you, obviously you like in football you have the Power 5 conferences. So could you take and you have divisions, right? You have D3,
Right.
where you have Whitewater
Yeah.
as an example, or D2, where you have like the powerhouses like in North Dakota or whatever that is, the Mount Marys. Like what if you were just a terrible, terrible team in one of the Power 5 conferences?
Rutgers.
And you got sure. We'll take Rutgers in football, traditionally,
Yes.
and then like say a Cincinnati, who in the AAC or whatever league they are, like
Yeah.
they would obviously be promoted. Like,
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, that I do like that a lot, because I think that works without needing to worry too much financially. I mean, certainly there are financial incentives to the opponent. But
You got to pay the players.
yeah, when they
Right.
start doing that, well, I suppose they are going to start doing that in a way. I don't know. That whole thing's so complicated that I just haven't been able to follow it.
But I actually thought about that too. But then I was like, oh, maybe college football is all one thing. But then you said there's different divisions, so there are tiers in college football.
There's different divisions, yeah, of the leagues, and then there's
Well,
also different conferences within those divisions.
right.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that would be a much better model than like a professional sport because it is so. It's like old school politics where everyone's like, we're comfortable making our money this way. We don't want to like shock that or not lose out on anything.
Yeah, we're the New York Jets. We're a financially efficient franchise. It's no, I think there's so much potential with promotion and relegation in major sports, but I think that's what makes the Premier League. The stakes are so high, no matter where you are in the standings. You're either playing for a championship, or you're playing to not be relegated to basically obscurity in the following year, and then.
Right.
I mean, that's got to be like the darkest, just most sinking feeling for any player on those teams. Like,
Right. Well, think about like I said, Middlesbrough, right? Like I can't remember if they were relegated that year, but it was shortly thereafter,
sure,
and that was 12 or 13 years ago, and they just haven't been back.
wow,
I don't even know what league they're in right now, but they they lose all of that Premier League money, all of the fans, uh, all of the TV money that you get, the sponsorship money. Like eh, without that money, you just can't pay the players.
yeah,
You know,
which is just, yeah, it's got to just be the worst feeling ever.
It also sets it up to something in sports we all love, which is an underdog story.
Yeah,
You know, it gives like that little bit of extra hope for some of those teams who really are pushing up there, and then they actually have a chance to play with the big boys.
it's true.
yes,
I know. I feel
there
like
was a. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I feel like that's what would suck me in right away. Mm-hmm. What are you saying?
There was a team that recently just got relegated, Bournemouth.
Mm-hmm.
They had made it up to Premier League, and they're a smaller club just by stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Their stadium was somewhere like in the 10-11,000 range. Imagine like a Manchester United who plays in front of 80,000 coming to play at your 10,000
Wow.
person stadium.
Yeah, that's
You
crazy.
know, like that's the beauty of it, is that the minnows can climb their way up to play with the big boys.
Absolutely. And
And
have any like ever just come in and won it? Or anybody notable, or I don't know, probably few and far between.
so Leicester City, 3-ish years ago,
Mhm.
came out of nowhere and won it.
Wow.
Wow.
Um, they had only been in the Premier League for a little bit. I mean, they may have been in earlier, but they got a new owner, and they just had like the perfect season, the perfect season where they just everything came together and they beat all the big boys, and all the neutrals, as they call it, were rooting for them, and they just magically won it. And now they're considered one of like the big six in the Premier League. There's kind of like a hierarchy in some ways, where like there's always like a top six that are generally always stay up there, just
Sure.
financial clout and whatnot. One thing that is interesting is kind of something similar. So there, we talked about cups a little bit. We talked about obviously just winning the league. We talked about the Champions League. There is something called the FA Cup,
Mm-hmm.
in which everybody in out of those 70 teams, as you say, everybody gets put into a tourney,
Oh wow.
kind of like a Hoosiers.
Huh.
Um,
That's fun.
so that's called the FA Cup. That's like the oldest cup competition, I believe, at least for English football.
Mhm.
And U.S. soccer does the same thing. So all the MLS clubs plus all the lower division teams, even Milwaukee Soccer Club, which I can't think of the name as, they play in that.
Oh yeah, are they still the Wave? Man, I don't remember.
Well, that's the indoor, but there is an
Sure.
outdoor team.
Oh,
But
the Rush.
so there is an opportunity, like can you imagine, like, if you were like, I'm here in Cedarburg. Can you imagine if your like Cedarburg team was in the league and the New York Yankees came into town and played in your like 5,000 person stadium or whatever it may be,
That would be
cool.
spectacular.
Would it, that like that's like the beauty of it. That's what I love
Right.
about
Anybody gets
those
a
cup
chance,
competitions.
right?
And anybody gets a chance, and you potentially, like, your bottom rung league team, the Sunday pub league where they afterwards they go to the pub and drink their beer, could go up against like a Cristiano Ronaldo or something.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Excellent. No, I think that's I like that way better than like anything that we do here. It's just
Like
so
a team
standard.
can't rest on their laurels. They gotta be
Yeah.
thirsty at all times.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's just cool that there are things that you can compete for.
Right. That aren't
You
just
know,
I'm stuck
like,
in my division, so
right. Well,
boo.
you can try and win it all. You can try and not get relegated. You can also compete in all these other cups. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah. No, it's great. Is I think that there's a lot that works for the Premier League that it makes a lot of sense why it is so popular. Like to the fact that like no matter who you cheer for, you're gonna have something that season to have, hang your hat on or be able to look forward to. Whereas like, in the NFL after week 4, if you're a Jacksonville Jaguar fan, I don't know how many people out there are, but it's your season's over and you just don't
Right,
you don't
right.
even want to
And
watch anymore.
and at that point too, you're probably rooting against your team so that you can
Yeah.
get a higher
Get
draft
that
pick.
draft pick. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You're literally not playing for anything, whereas in world soccer, you're playing because you want to exist in that league.
Right. Not just going for a top player.
Right.
Which, speaking of top players, brings us to our last segment of the week, which
Oh boy.
is power rankings. And this week, I tried to go for something to give Fred and I a little bit of an in, more so. And that is the best athletes on and off the field in the history of the Premier League. So I'm talking not only just about their on-field presence, but who they are off the field and other, mediums, whether it be TV or movies or ads or whatever it might be, And I mean, there's obviously one potential slam dunk in that regard, but where would you guys rank them? And you can weigh it any way you want to with that player. And I don't know if you would want to kick us off, Austin.
How about you kick us off with the slam dunk? I'm not sure where you're gonna go in. Where you're
Okay.
gonna go with this.
Because for me, it's David Beckham. I mean,
Okay.
has anybody had as big of a world impact in terms of being a cultural icon as well as a great player than Beckham?
Sure. Good point.
I mean, famous player, movie named after him.
Well, no bend. Yeah.
Well, no bend to bend it like Beckham. Wife was one of the, a member of one of the biggest
Very
music groups
global
ever.
pop star, right?
Yeah. And, he's gotten how many sponsorships and how many brands he's been a part of. So I think for me, he'd be like number one. We can just maybe do like, just talk about our top 3 guys.
Does it have to be Premier League, or are you just talking world soccer in general?
I guess Premier League, but if you want to go world soccer because it's a little easier, I'm good with that. There's no rules.
I'll jump in real quick because, I don't know a lot, and I'm pretty sure Wayne Rooney is a guy
Yep.
who, is he the guy who, like, there'll be pictures of him and he'll be, like, drinking a beer and smoking a cigarette in a hot tub? Because I don't know if that's him, but any sort of football player that has that vibe, like, Reese Fons and the Replacements.
Oh,
Which I
yeah.
know is totally a thing because, like, my brother followed soccer and he was like, yeah, some of these guys, I don't know how they run so much, but you see these pictures of them, like, smoking cigarettes and drinking pints all the time. And I'm like, that's also the vibe I love about the soccer culture is that beer is like, yeah, beer, it's cool.
I'm looking up Wayne Rooney, who is now the current gaffer for Derby County.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But he was also the all-time leading scorer for Manchester United. Is that right, Austin?
It sounds about right.
You're like, sure.
And they just like it's always great when the commentators were working with Rooney because just Rooney.
Rooney. Fun to say.
Another Manchester United player that was a little bit before our time, but comes to mind is Roy Keane, who is since we talked about Ted Lasso quite a bit today.
Yeah,
Roy Kent is loosely based off of Roy Keane, is my understanding
that makes
wow.
sense.
of it.
We did confirm, too, that Wayne Rooney is the cigarette guy. I'm showing you a picture of him right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm glad I don't have to drop into the chat. There's definitely him in the hot tub, drinking beer, smoking cigs. But it's mostly like, looks like when he's pretty young.
Yeah.
But yeah, Roy Keane, which I don't know how he's going to ever get separated from Roy Kent now.
Right. I don't know enough about him. I know that he was a Manchester United legend. I know that he was considered like one of the bad boys, like one of the hard men, like just played really tough, fouled really hard, like just played a very physical brand of soccer. But he's also a pundit.
Oh, nice.
Man. Interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Speaking of foul players, I got another honorable mention.
Oh, yeah?
Vinny Jones.
I was just looking at him.
Ah.
I was like, he played in the before
he got
the
kicked
Premier
off,
League.
right?
Yes, before it was the Premier League, though, he did play for Chelsea and Wimbledon. Were they part of it?
I thought Wimbledon was tennis.
Wimbledon is a soccer club as well.
Okay,
Ugh,
Yep.
that's
but I mean,
confusing.
being a former Chelsea player, though, with his man.
I don't think I knew that actually.
Yep.
that he played for Chelsea or that he played
That he
soccer.
played for Chelsea. I knew he played for soccer. I think Gordon Ramsay played a little bit of professional soccer, or at least like was in an academy.
Oh,
I believe it because like he looks like it. He has like footballer attitude or
Right.
that archetype of a footballer. the
Yeah.
hard.
That no nonsense, like my way or the highway type thing.
Yeah, I'm absolutely looking that up, but you're totally right though about Vinny Jones. I think that totally counts. If he before it was officially the Premier League, like the fact that they had that tier that he was in there, that's a big pull. I'm not seeing anything about Ramsey
I could be wrong.
soccer. Let's see.
Certainly not positive about it.
He might not have been in a big one either.
But I feel like he probably played at some level because it's just so big there. Like it's he played for
Right.
his school, his boarding school at least.
yeah.
If you're so go ahead.
No, I don't really have anything. I was
If you're
ranting.
talking about not necessarily Premier League, but just like famous soccer players. Well, actually, I take that back because he's back in the Premier League. You got to talk about Ronaldo, of
Yep.
course, and
Huge.
Messi, who was with Barcelona for like 20 years and now is on PSG in Paris.
And still go back and forward, right? Who you would say is the best player in the
Yeah,
world?
yeah, and those two have been the top two for like probably at least 15 years now. Like there's always like a third place, a very good player, an amazing player, like Robert Lewandowski for Bayern Munich. I think came in third in the voting right now this past year. But those two, like, just for a long time, have held the reins. Those guys are just, with all their endorsements and commercials, and I think Ronaldo has a clothing line, just makes so much money hand over fist.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And are such worldwide because soccer is a world sport, they're just such worldwide phenomenons too.
Yeah. I mean, they are like household names. I think even if you don't necessarily play soccer, if someone says their names, you can recognize them. It's
Right.
like, I mean, yeah, they're the Nadal and Djokovic of soccer, except, one's allowed into Australia and one is not.
Right.
I'm totally dating this podcast with that comment.
One is allowed in and one is not.
Yeah, one is getting deported
One is
for
deported.
lying about his vaccine. Yeah. No, but that is, I mean, they're the faces, of modern soccer, I think, is when we're talking about the World Cup, which is going to be this year, 2022.
Year, yeah. Yeah. They're in the midst of qualifying right now.
Yeah. Might have to do a World Cup pool. Maybe do something like that.
it.
Get it started.
Nice.
I'm all about it. I get into it. I get into the World Cup. Maybe this time after the World Cup, I'll start watching the Premier League a little bit. Maybe I'll pick Chelsea. Maybe I'll pick Manchester United. I don't know.
I want the one with the rooster on it. I think it's Tottenham or something.
Oh yeah, I think maybe that's right. Tottenham.
There is a fowl on there. What type of bird it is exactly, I don't know.
Okay.
But is it a foul though or a red card?
Wow.
On that note, I think that brings us to a lovely.
Yeah, I
finish.
think I'm gonna give Tom a red card on that one. He's
Yes,
gonna have
right.
Come on, Rob,
Austin
just
and I are
yellow.
gonna finish this.
Just a yellow.
All right,
Too-
I'm
too
pulling
bad
out
it-
a yellow now.
Too bad this is just a podcast and you can't see me waving my imaginary red card.
Yeah, I know. I see it. I see it in my mind's eye. But this has been a lot of fun. I think it's been definitely educational, even if it's not like, getting into the deepest in the weeds. We're obviously talking about a very big franchise, lots of teams, lots of players. I could totally see us coming back to this at some point and focusing on specific teams at some point, or clubs. Sorry, the clubs over here in England. Who is that announcer, by the way, that everybody always impersonates? He's like on every major broadcast. He's great.
His name is like Graham Lloyd or something like that. I'd
Yeah.
have to look it up.
He's wonderful. Like he's got such a, like Fred said, it's like listening to poetry when you're watching a soccer match.
Oh, he's handling the ball beautifully. I don't know. I turned Irish at the end there, but
Handling it beautifully. Oh, that's good. Austin, I would ask if you want to plug anything, but maybe just looking forward to a big event coming up.
Yeah, just looking forward to the kiddo soon.
Yeah,
That's really all that I have on my mind at the moment.
it's possible that when this drops, your baby will have been born.
Wow.
Any words you would like to share with them as they potentially are welcomed into the world after this episode comes out?
Cheer for Chelsea.
That's it. That's
and
it.
listen to State of the Franchise.
Listen to the state of the franchise.
Listen to the
That's-
state of the franchise.
Thank you. Yes, and I'll remind everybody we do have a virtual tip jar that you can also donate to help us keep the show going. All proceeds and all donations are going to help us continue producing the show. That's buymeacoffee.com/STOF. Wait, buymeacoffee/SOTF. Is that what I said?
SOTF.
SOTF, State of the Franchise. I think I said that, but I'm doubting myself.
Now that somebody else is getting your tips.
Yeah, the stupid Toms of Florida.
Yeah, I was trying to do one and it still had your name in it. I was like, the sound of freaking Tom.
Sound of freaking Tom. So please come and donate. It's buymeacoffee.com/SOTF. Buy a Fred and I a drink. We'll put it right back into the show. Bring you great episodes like this. Fred, do you have anything else you want to plug?
No, my shows keep getting canceled at the theater, so hopefully soon I'll get to do some improv. Maybe when the Omicron eases up a little
Yeah.
in March, I would start looking for dates, and I think at this point I'm in like 80% of the teams at the interchange. So like, pick a show. I'm probably gonna be in it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I got going on other than this.
That's theinterchangetheater.com.
Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us, Austin. Really appreciate you giving us all your insight this week. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, good luck with the baby, and be good.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Catch you later.
Bye. Thanks for tuning into this week's State of the Franchise. If you like what you're hearing, please remember to rate and review us, and please tell people about it. We love to have more support from great listeners like you. You can also, as we mentioned, go to buymeacoffee.com/SOTF to buy Fred and I a drink. Any donations that you give us there will go right back into the show so we can keep producing great episodes like this one. And stay tuned for next time. We'll be discussing the music genre of 2000s era metal. That's the subgenre metalcore specifically. But yeah, we'll be discussing metal. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll look forward to seeing you then. Take care.